Dr. Chris Labos coming up. I just want to let you know with respect to the hydro outages, I just did a quick refresh here on the hydro site. They're taking care, obviously across the province, the number has gone down significantly from this morning. At one point, I think we were over 300,000. We are now down below 200,000. But in Montreal, when we started just after 2 o'clock this afternoon, I think that number here was a little over 2,000. We are now down to 1,300. So it's getting done. But as the hydro spokesman told us at the time, there will be some people who will not get their hydro back until probably tomorrow morning. So just keep that in mind. But as I said, progress is being made. So that's the good news. And on the island of Montreal, significant progress being made, but still over 1,000 people being affected. All right, Dr. Chris Labos, cardiologist with a degree in epidemiology. He's a regular contributor here on CJAD 800 as well. You can catch him every Sunday morning on Weekends with Joanne Vrakas at 7:20. So, Chris, I came across this article, and I thought we got to talk about this because I would never have thought about this, which is, for better or worse, cleaning out your medicine cabinet, because the article talks about, he says, as a doctor, I tell patients to get rid of these 5 medications. Now, when I say I never do this, I'm thinking a lot of people probably are the same. You buy medication, you leave it there and you forget about it, but that's not a good idea, right?
No, and it's not a good idea for 2 reasons. One is medications do expire. I mean, they don't expire from 1 week to the next, in the way that food does, but medications do eventually expire. And so if you buy, Costco level bottles of Tylenol, there is a possibility that, they will stick around for a few years and could potentially expire. So that's the one thing, which was actually not brought up in the article, which I thought was interesting. That tends to be the thing that most people forget. But there was a few medications in that article, in that list, that, for which the science has evolved, for which the science has changed, and what used to be commonplace a few years back, perhaps a little bit less so now, and certain things that we used to do, like, have baby aspirin in the house to take it prophylactically, I mean, that has evolved. This is not necessarily new information. I think we've even talked about this before, about how, the idea of, every man over the age of 50 should take a baby aspirin is no longer really valid anymore. But so these things are out there. And so a lot of stuff like, certain laxatives or stool softeners have sort of fallen out of favor. Colace is an interesting one. For allergies, most people would say now move away from Benadryl because it causes sleepiness, and you want to go to some of the more non-drowsy formulations like the Claritins and the Reactins, which again is not new information to people, but it does mean that you might have some, holdover still in your medicine cabinet. And at a certain point, you might want to get rid of these, number one, because they've expired, but also number two, they do potentially pose a risk, and especially if you have young kids in your house, maybe you don't want to have these things lying around, because kids sometimes do get into medications and sometimes they do get into trouble. And every year there are quite a few calls to the Poison Control Center because of kids getting into medications. So you need to be aware of those things, not just because of you, but also for some of the little people that might be in your house as well.
So to go back to your point about, the aspirins, right, which you mentioned for years and years, I didn't know this still wasn't the case. Primary prevention, heart disease, depending on how old you happen to be, that's not the rule anymore?
It's not the rule anymore. Now, I can wax philosophical about this for hours on end, and I intend to do so right now. But the short version of this is that if you went back to the 1980s, 1990s, there was a role for giving aspirin prophylactically. Now, because so many other better medications are out there for cholesterol, blood pressure, diabetes, because we're much better at treating people's risk factors because people smoke less, we are just overall as a population at lower risk for heart disease than we were 20, 30 years ago, which is counterintuitive and not what most people think. But because most people are actually at pretty low risk for heart disease, taking a baby aspirin is just exposing you to a bleeding risk without giving you that much cardiovascular benefit. Mm-hmm. If you've had a heart attack and stroke, then obviously we treat you with aspirin, but we treat the high-risk patients, not the general low-risk population. And so that metric has really changed.
Is it also still this issue of, yes, it's only an aspirin, but you keep taking them on a regular basis, you're not doing your gut any good either, right? Your stomach's going to feel it too, or not?
Potentially, yes. So aspirin, like all anti-inflammatories, like Advil, like ibuprofen, they can increase the risk of stomach ulcers. At the low dose of a baby aspirin, that risk is probably reduced. You tend to see the stomach upset at the higher doses, like with regular aspirin, which is almost never given anymore. But yeah, even at a lower dose of aspirin, you are subjecting yourself potentially to stomach issues and the increased risk of bleeding that comes with it. Because if you do get a stomach ulcer, and that starts bleeding, that could potentially be a life-threatening bleed.
Okay. Couple of other things with respect to medicine cabinets. I mentioned this when we first talked about it, and I said you were going to, bring this up. Cold medication, which people tend to buy when they get a cold. Eventually, the cold leaves, but the medication stays. I had a bottle of cold or cough syrup rather in my home, and I think the expiry was 2022. Is that time to flush, or keep it, or what do I do?
Probably yes, to get rid of it. That's always the safest option. The expiry dates on medications are fascinating, which again, another topic I can wax philosophically on for an hour. Yeah. It's not as if the medication has necessarily gone bad. It's that the way these expiry dates are set is that the manufacturer will keep a lot of medication, observe it for 2 years, let's say, test it, and then if it still looks that it's biologically intact, we'll say the expiry date is 2 years off of that lot of medication whenever each lot is produced. So that's how expiry dates are more or less set. So it's not as if it's necessarily gone bad. It's going to depend on whether you've actually opened the package or not. If you've opened the package and exposed it to the elements, there's a potential that the medications can start to go bad at that point. Whereas if it's sealed, then it could potentially last longer. So there is some play with expiry dates, but as a general rule, especially if you've opened the bottle, once it reaches the expiry date, probably better to get rid of it. And especially with cold and cough medications, the reality is that most of them don't actually work. And there's been a real push to try to get some of them off the shelves, especially the cough syrups with codeine, which is very hard to find these days, to be fair. It really didn't seem to do anything, and yet a lot of people spent a lot of money buying these products for no clear, real benefit.
Well, hold on. Did you just say that many or most of these cold and cough medicines don't work?
Yeah, they don't really do anything. Now, if you have a fever and you're taking Tylenol, that will make you feel better, obviously. It won't actually shorten the duration of the cold. The most cough syrups don't really do anything, to be honest with you. Your cough is sort of going to run its course, and there's probably very little that you can do about it. Some of the decongestants might potentially be a little bit beneficial, but there's a lot of reluctance because they can also increase your blood pressure, and there are some side effects associated with that. And some of the vasoconstrictors, the sprays like the Otrivin, that's actually recommended against, because if you have a stuffy nose, it's not that it becomes habit-forming, but when you stop it, your blood vessels dilate again, the congestion gets worse, and some people get trapped into this vicious cycle where they can't stop taking the nasal spray Otrivin because they become, in a sense, addicted to it. So there are considerations there, which is why there's been this push to sort of, it's a virus, it's a viral cold. You're probably not going to be able to change the course of that. Just let it run its course, stay hydrated, and it'll get better on its own. You
know how expensive these medications have become?
Yeah, I know. And again, if you're using them to treat symptoms and you feel better, it's going to make the cold somewhat more tolerable for a short period of time, but it's probably not going to change much. Yeah.
Right. Well, the things you learn on this show. Okay. Chris, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Bryan Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.